Afternoon. This is Mark's Musings, and we are here at WCTV in Wilmington, Massachusetts. We're producing a program where we interview local authors, and today we are pleased to have with us Stephanie Callan, who has written a wonderful book. Good afternoon, Stephanie.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Nice to see you today.
Nice to see you too. Thank you for having me.
I'm glad that you were here, and we took a little tour of the station a little bit, and you got to see what we do here. So I'm glad that you are able to join us today. So that's great. So today, a reason I'm going to talk about to you is that you have written a new book called The Debt, DEBT, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. But tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get started?
Well, I've kind of always wanted to be a writer, so I've always kind of and just kind of tooling around with it since I was a kid.
Oh,
I
nice.
distinctly remember being a child, listening to my mom reading me stories and be like, yeah, I want to do that. So I would just write pretty terrible children's books while being a child because
Wow.
being
Yeah.
a child
But at least you wrote something.
yeah, I was writing.
That's nice. So
Yeah.
so you got started that way. That's super.
Yeah, and I just kind of just kept going at it.
Okay, yeah. And then while you were very young, you did that, and then when you were in school, did you write through English classes and things like that?
Yeah. Also kept writing through English classes and stuff, like
Yeah.
you said.
And then I suppose they had creative writing classes in high school, etc., or did they have something like that? No.
Something similar.
Similar.
I went to a Voc Tech high school, so
So they had
yeah.
something similar.
something similar.
Yeah. Did you have any training after high school, or?
Yeah. I also got an English degree through Pine Manor College.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, did you major in so was it
English
English
writing.
English writing? Okay, great. And that turn into a job or anything? Did you
Not as much. I had some difficulty there, so
Okay. Yeah.
my life outside of writing is mostly working in a bakery. So lots of donuts, lots of cakes.
Well, that sounds
Yeah.
great. Your break is probably on the horizon. You'll be when people discover how well
Yeah.
this book is. Maybe you'll become a professional writer eventually. Yeah.
Well, I also consider actually having something published to be, a break in itself. So
That's nice.
if
Yeah.
that doesn't sound like too odd or anything, but
I think that you got off to a good start
Yeah.
anyway here. So that sounds great. So tell us just a little bit about this book here. What is
Yeah.
the debt?
so the debt is
Excuse me.
here it is for just
Okay.
a video. So the debt is kind of a fantasy steampunk story, kind of geared towards younger YA audiences. Follows a young girl, Nora, who one day just kind of accidentally stumbles on a fire monster that is caged in the basement.
Oh,
and,
no.
Yeah. And all of the weird, kind of all the weird stuff that follows as she deals with the fact that there is a fire monster in her basement and how to free him and such.
What is a fire monster? What's that?
Well, technically, his title is technically elemental, but I'm just kind of simplifying it to he's a
Okay.
fire monster.
Okay, an elemental. So he has those powers,
Yes.
yeah. Well, that's interesting, yeah, because I read a little bit about the introduction to the book, the first chapter there, and I noticed that she has a dog, or a cat, or a dog, or
Yes.
something, and the dog,
The
cat,
kitty.
kitty goes down to the basement, and she follows the kitty and finds
Yeah.
something there that she's afraid of at first, and
Yes.
then finally begins to communicate with
Yeah.
the thing that's there. So that's interesting. Yeah. So so that's a good start to a cliffhanger. Like you don't know
Yeah.
what's going to transpire. So now, where did you get that idea? Did you is that one of several ideas that you have about writing, or is that an idea that's been formulating in your head for a while? Or
It kind of simmered there for a while. I really liked the idea of, well, what if there's this like ancient, dangerous creature just locked up in some dude's basement? What if a child found it? Like, what would happen?
Oh yeah.
And then like what would their interactions be like from there on out? So the story really just kind of came from there, and I also just kind of came from my desire to make Nora a bit different from most YA novel heroes. She is absolutely not brave in the slightest. She has so much anxiety and so much doubts and so much, just so much like kind of so much fears that are gripping at her.
Yes. Yeah. So
and I
she's trying to
just-
break out of that.
Yeah. So just trying to have someone like that in a fantasy setting and in an adventure setting is something that I wanted when I was around that age. So just kind of making something available for maybe just someone else who might need that.
Have you read a lot of other fantasy
Oh, yeah.
young adult type fantasies? So that's
Yeah.
something that you're trying to follow because you've had some experience with that. Yeah. Well, that sounds great. What are
Yes.
some of your authors, or do you have some favorite
Oh, yeah.
authors in adult fiction?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, young,
yeah.
young adult.
Well, there's Philip Pullman. His Dark Materials trilogy actually was a big influence on the Debt.
Oh,
Although I didn't realize until after I was done and like editing it, I was like,
that's
how
similar.
about that? I didn't know I did that. There's Neil Gaiman. He does adult fiction and like young fiction, but he always a lot of fun. That dude.
That's great.
yeah.
Yeah. So you had some experience with other authors, getting
Yeah.
your feet wet, so to speak,
Yeah.
on the types of books
with the genre.
yeah, the genre. So you took that experience there and you tried to do it yourself too. And looks like you've had a good way to start anyway. And this is interesting. That I started to get interested in it, and I want to read some more about it. So
thank you.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. So I met you at the Tewksbury Authors Fair, and that was quite a nice event.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. How did you like that?
Oh man, it was great. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of super interesting people there. A lot of great books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were probably about 15 or 20 authors there in a round table.
Yeah.
And they all had different types of books that they had written. Some of them were more experienced than others.
Yeah.
And some, it's kind of daunting because some of them have 20 books at their table that they've written, and then others just have one or two because they're just getting started.
Yeah.
But like I said before, we all start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And it's nice. And then they all got up and they told a little bit about their experiences. Or their books, and then afterwards, the audience, there was an audience maybe of 50 people or so, and then afterwards, the audience had a chance to go around to the tables and talk to the authors individually, and then buy some of their books.
Yeah.
So hopefully you got
Yeah.
sold a few books there and got some interesting conversation going on.
Oh,
where-
definitely. Yeah. That was a great event.
So, besides that was where I got the names of several authors, and I got yours, and that was very fortuitous because I'm glad that we now got together and you were able to interview me with me here at the TV station. So. I think that our broadcast will go out all over the country, and hopefully it'll give people a little shot in the arm on what to expect. Like, and they'll say, gee, that sounds interesting. I'd like to take a more in-depth look into the book called The Debt. And so that was great. Now, besides doing the writing and you meeting some of those people, you also belong to a writers group too.
I do, yeah. I belong to a writers group. I meet at the Chelmsford Public Library in Chelmsford, Massachusetts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And how many people are in that group? Or
That is a tough question to answer because it varies from like month
Week,
to
month to
month.
month, yeah.
Because depending on people's availability,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
So you'll
maybe
come one week, it'll be like 5 people. You come the next week, it'll be 10. You come the next week, it'll be two.
so there's a variation
Yeah.
there, yeah. Well, that's nice. And so you're learning a little bit about writing
Oh yeah.
from the members of the group and what they have to tell you about
Yeah.
their stories. It's nice. Yeah, I belong to a group here in Wilmington, and again, the group that I belong to have a variety of members. Some are just starting, and some of them have written some books and stories and magazine articles and so there's quite a variety. And then we have guest speakers that come in periodically and give us little tidbits about the writing genre, like and how to get started and whatever. Last month I interviewed a young lady who writes romance novels. And so the previous month I interviewed someone who writes about historical events, history,
Yeah.
and things like that. So there's a book for every idea that somebody has. And so we're glad that we're able to talk to you about your book here. So let me see. How did you decide? Did you self-publish or did you have a publisher on this book here?
I did self-publish. I published through Lulu.com.
Okay.
Yeah, they have a very easy self-publishing route.
Yeah. So all you have to do is you send them your manuscript basically, and you try to follow their formatting
Yeah.
I outline.
Yeah.
And so you send them to, and then you then pick a cover. And did they have stock covers to pick from that you could look at?
They do. However, I was fortunate enough, or one of my friends, my very close friend of mine is a graphic designer.
Oh, great.
So she actually, she designed this cover for me, as well as some of the illustrations that are inside. There are illustrations inside.
Great. Good.
Like just a side note, illustrations. But yeah, she designed the cover, this beautiful cover that I adore, and
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good that you had somebody who was experienced in
Yeah.
being a graphic designer and help you along with that too. I know that some people look for their books and there are stock photos that you can pick
Yeah.
from and download them, and as long as you use them in
Yeah.
the sale on Amazon or on Google, then they're copyright free, so that's great.
Yes.
So that's good. That's a big hurdle. And also, when you self-publish, you only have to pay for the books that you buy,
Exactly,
so
yeah.
that's good. And then they have a website so that when people, when you put it on Amazon, for instance, it's print on demand, so they will only print books that people order. So that's good. That's available. When you go to a publisher itself, you sometimes have to pay a couple of $1,000s just to get a couple of books published, or
Yeah.
100 books published, and it's a little bit more expensive going that route.
Yeah, that could be very difficult.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So, have you had some success with this book here? A little bit.
A bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Well-
I said earlier, I honestly consider the fact that I managed to get myself to publish this thing in the first place to be a success. So
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
you feel good about that
I
too.
do.
That
Yeah.
you've made your first. You've gone over your first hurdle,
Yeah.
and you published a book. You've got a good picture, a cover, and you've got a graphic artist to help you with either the cover and the illustrations inside. And how did you decide on a price point, for instance? How did you go about doing something like that?
Okay, sorry for laughing. I'm laughing because one of my friends, who she makes jewelry, she has her own business, is constantly getting me to raise my prices because
Yeah.
just because I'll be like, no, I got to make it lower so that it's affordable. She's like, no, you're not worth this much. Make it higher.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's basically what I base it around. How much she bullies me into pricing. Sometimes I'm able to get a little bit lower, but
Well, sometimes when people try to figure out the price of their book, they look into the genre that they're selling their book, and they try to get an average price of what other people are selling their books for. So you don't want to give it away
Right.
free,
well,
but yet
exactly, no,
but
but
yet you want it to be affordable, and you want it to be so that people will bite and. So I've seen also some authors will sometimes have giveaways. You might think about that too, where for a month you might have like a blog or a website or something, and you might say for the next month, for the first 50 people who sign up for my newsletter, then I'll give you one of my books for half price, or I'll give it to you for $1 or something like that.
Yeah.
So those are incentives that sometimes helps push your book along, And then another thing that you might think about is just setting up a display at a bookstore, for instance, calling a local bookstore and saying that you've just written a new book and that you'd like to have a coffee hour at the bookstore for Tuesday at 3 o'clock, and would they be interested, and would they give you some space on one of their shelves to sell some of your books? And sometimes they're very amenable to doing that. So that's a way of a local,
Yeah.
in Chelmsford, you might
Yeah.
even go and find a bookstore in Chelmsford and say, this is the deal that you're a new author, you'd like to have a couple of books on their bookshelf, and did you like to have a book signing at that store for a couple hours during the day, and you'd pay for the coffee and the cookies or something like that. And so you never know. They might say, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And it's advertising for them too, because then you'll advertise out there,
Yeah.
and you'll bring customers into their store. And not only are they looking at your book, but they're looking at some of the other books that are there too. So that's an avenue you might think about.
Thank you very much for that advice.
Yeah, yeah. And well, thank you. It's we all as authors, we all try to be
Yeah.
helpful to each
Yeah.
other, and like I said before, setting up an author page on Amazon is critical. People want to know a little bit about your background, where you're from. You don't have to give your
Yeah.
street address or any personal information, but you could say I'm from the northeast section of Massachusetts, or I live in such and such a town, and I grew up in this neighborhood, and I went to these schools, and I really enjoy writing, and some of my ideas are blah, 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 blah. And so you say something like that on your author page, and then you leave room for comments. And then sometimes if people see your book on Amazon, they'll go to your author page, and then they'll see, oh, gee, I can leave a comment. And then you'll hopefully get some reviews that way for the book. I notice you have a few reviews already for your book too, so that's great. And so you need to build momentum, for your book by doing all those
Right.
things, setting up a web page, setting up an author page, maybe doing a book signing, and even going to different local libraries too. Libraries will have author events, and not only Chelmsford, but Tewksbury, things like that. You can call them up and ask them, are they having an author fair coming up, and can you participate? And they'll say yes or no, and so you want to keep the ball rolling,
Yeah.
And it's hot. It's easy to sit back and say, well, I'll just see what happens. But if you don't keep your book out there in the public eye, there's a million books being published every day, and sometimes your book gets lost in the shuffle,
Yeah.
And I've experienced the same thing, So My books go through slow periods too, and I have to start thinking about trying to get it to go. So, all right. So we have. If people wanted to buy your book, where do they go for that?
So my books are available for sale on Amazon. They're also available on barnesandnoble.com and through lulu.com.
Okay, great, great. And they would look up your book. Is the title of your book is?
The title of my book is The Debt, DEBT.
And they look up your name.
Yes, you can. It would, yeah, my name, Stephanie Callan, Callan.
Okay, and so it'd be The Debt under Stephanie Callan. And then, so that's one way they can get your book is on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and so that was. And then, if they wanted to get in touch with you and maybe even have a book signed by you, they might even contact you by email.
Yeah, please feel free. My email is sdcallan, Callan, @gmail.com. Please feel free, guys.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, so that'd be great. So they could contact you by email, and if they wanted to buy a personal book from you and then have it signed, that would be a way to do that. And then you could then send them the book, and so you make contact that way. So I think that we have come to a close now of the interview. We talked a little bit about your book. Hopefully people will be interested in reading about The Debt, and it's a young adult type genre, and we talked about how they can get in touch with you and where the book is being sold. So for now, we have come to the close of our program. Remember, this is Mark's Musings, and we are at wctv.org in Wilmington, Massachusetts. And we're also simultaneously broadcast on SoundCloud. And we'll also have a video portion of this program on YouTube under Mark's Musings. So for now, we're going to sign off the air and say goodbye, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye now.